Born of the earth are we who briefly walk on its stage. We are merely guests striving to embrace its enormity and claim a piece of it as our own. We are humbled by its complexity, envious of its simplicity, and inherently drawn to its beauty. For the earth is in our writings, in our songs, in our hearts, and in our homes.
Now, what we have here is the outline of where the roof window is going to sit. So next thing to do here is to cut our exploratory hole and make sure there are no obstacles behind. Most roof windows and skylights you buy come with a chart that indicates the dimensions of the rough opening for that particular size and model. This rough opening measurement gives us the flexibility to adjust the window in the opening for square. Before cutting our hole in the ceiling, we need to prepare the area, laying down drop cloths to collect the debris and any roofing materials that may fall in. We also need to gather all our tools for the project, which include a reciprocating saw, a hammer, a speed square, a tape measure, a pry bar, an extension ladder, level, utility knife, circular saw, and screw gun and a screwdriver. Now, one thing to remember, don't forget the permit. In most municipalities throughout the country, whenever you do any kind of framing or change to a house, it needs to be inspected. So getting the permit is part of the process. It's worth the trouble and the effort. And as part of preparation, it's absolutely critical you make sure that you inspect all your materials. The glass is intact, the cladding is as it should be with no concealed damage, and that you have all the flashing that's necessary. We'll be cutting open the roof when we return on the Home Pro.
Sometimes the scariest part of the day isn't when the sun goes down. That's why Velux roof windows and skylights give you the power to control the day.
Okay, we have the outline for a rough opening for the roof window ready for cutting, but we'll want to keep two things in mind. Number one, this is just to provide you with a sense of where the window is going to be situated. But in fact, it probably will shift from left to right depending upon where the rafters line up. And when we do the cutting, we're also going to exceed this line by about 10 inches. And the reason for that is we do have to provide some new framing materials to support the roof because we've basically cut a hole in here that needs to be tied into the existing framing. So with that in mind, we're all ready to cut. Okay, Dick. We also want to be aware of any electrical possibilities. Now, there's an overhead light and outlet along this wall, and we want to be sure that when we cut through the drywall, we don't exceed the thickness of the drywall with our cut. Then we remove all the excess insulation. Now we measure and mark the 2x4 rafters for making flare cuts. Okay, if you look here, you'll notice that we have a plumb cut, which we call a flare cut. What it does is it allows more light to enter the room because ordinarily in some applications, people might tend to cut the wood in this direction. By opening it up a little bit more, we allow more light to enter. It's parallel to the wall, it's plumb to the wall. We did the same with the rafter up above. We build this frame to our rough opening dimensions, and we're using the existing rafter members, but providing new headers at the top and the bottom. Those are the horizontal ones. We'll also be sistering new 2x4s to the old rafters on the side. Dick, can you tell us how you arrived at the angle for the flare cut here?
Sure, Jerry. Since we know that the roof is a 9/12 pitch, what I did was I used a speed square or tri-square.
Right.
This helps us to set the degrees on the saw. Now here's how I did that.
Okay.
We're going to use this top as the pivot, and we're going to slide this over to 9/12 since, again, that's the pitch of our roof. Okay, that's 9/12 on the common rafter scale. Okay, 9/12, and if we follow that down, that indicates that it's at 37 degrees. So we transfer that 37 degrees onto the saw. Now we're ready to cut.
Now with our rough opening framed out, we can cut through the roof. But before we do, we're going to drive nails through the roofing in each corner as guides for removing the roofing on the other side. Depending on the pitch of your roof and your comfort level, or lack thereof, you may want to attach roof brackets and a plank to work from. Now the next step is to remove all the shingles and roofing felt around the work area of our rough opening. Now you can cut your hole for the roof window from the inside or the outside, but the inside here is the most accessible. So Dick, take it away. We can assemble our two roof windows and get them ready for installation. Now first, we're going to secure our mounting bracket. This will fasten the frame to the roof. Then we'll remove our sash. This makes the job easier for us because it's now lighter and there's less risk of damage to the components. Okay, I got it. Well, now we're ready to set our roof window in position. You want to take it up, Dick? We lifted up our window and we angled it to get it through the rough opening, and then we set it in position on the roof. How should look? Good. Next, with a sample piece of wood, Dick works his way around the perimeter of the window to check for the offset spacing of the interior finish and trim, making sure it's going to be correct. Good. Now, taking the screws that come with the window, we temporarily attach it to the roof. We're checking the window to make sure it's square. And if it isn't, we can take the screws out and reposition the window. And that's the beauty of a rough opening. It's always a little bit oversized so you can make the adjustments. Ours is perfectly square. We're ready to screw it down. When we come back, we'll finish our skylight installation.
There's a place in my heart for a sunrise, for the late afternoon feel of the summer's breeze. And there is a place in my home where my heart is always full. Velux, roof windows and skylights made to draw you closer to the world outside and closer to yourself. Because Velux knows the most important world you live in is the one you call your own.
As an underlayment for our shingles, we're setting down rubberized roofing membrane all the way around the frame or perimeter of the roof window. Now you can also use roofing felt for this. However, the roofing membrane is best in places where there tends to be ice buildup or in colder climates. Now when the ice melts, sometimes the pressure of the ice when it refreezes can force itself back up under the shingles and cause a leak to occur. So that's why we're using this material. This is the preferred method in the northern climates. Now we're ready to do our shingles and our flashing. And the kind of flashing we use is called step flashing. The first piece goes down against the side of the skylight or the roof window, and then up against it we'll put our shingle. It covers the flashing. The next step flashing goes here, and the next shingle butts up against it like that. That way we keep the water running downhill. It never impacts against the window. First, we shingle up to the bottom of the roof window. Then we position our bottom sill flashing tight against the frame of the window and secure it to the frame with flashing nails provided. Now this is perfect flashing for this kind of thin matted material, in other words fiberglass or asphalt shingles. Now what determines the kind of flashing you're going to use are the roof pitch and the kind of materials you have. If you have Spanish tiles or thick wood shakes, even slate, you're probably going to have to use a different kind of flashing to meet those requirements. Your manufacturer can provide you with that information at the time that you buy the window. Now we begin working our way up the roof with our step flashing, alternating shingles with the flashing as we climb up both of the sides. We have an excess of flashing extending beyond the frame, which will be cut with some tin snips and bent back around the top area of the window. Then we screw on the side cladding that we had previously removed. The last step is to crimp the head flashing over the top edge of the head cover, then finish laying down the rest of the roof shingles. With one unit flashed, we can repeat the same steps on our next unit. Now we can reinstall the sash. First, we're going to take the sash and lock it into the hinge pins. Then we're going to tighten the set screws. We raise the window up so we can engage the side mechanism, which will allow us to fit the barrel bolt to their position on the side of the window frame. This allows the window to pivot. Once that's complete, we tip the window back down and lock that side mechanism into its bar. From there, we're able to bring the window back down and gently place a scissor mechanism which raises the window up and down, and that completes the sash installation. Now, before we finish the interior, we have to pay attention to the need for ventilation around the roof window. We have a cavity here above the fiberglass and below the sheathing, because right above us is the shingle that we put on along with the flashing. So we want to be sure that we create that airspace. You don't want the insulation pushed up onto the sheathing. You want it down here resting on the drywall. That way the air can move above and around the window. You won't have any problems with the roofing materials. Well, now with both windows in, let's recap the steps in our process. Once the homeowner determined where they wanted the roof windows, we measured and marked the locations of the rough openings. Then we cut out our holes in the ceiling and framed out the openings. Then we cut out our holes in the roof and removed the sheathing. We next removed the sash and set our roof windows into the openings, added the flashing and the shingles, and we reset the sashes and checked their operation. Installing skylights requires a variety of skills: framing, roofing, drywall, interior finish. And if you have more ambition than skill, you might want to check out your local home center. Many times during the year they have clinics on how to install these. To finish off the room, the homeowners added a cool gray-green textured wallpaper and painted the trim of the windows to match. Next up, tricks of the trade. On every program, we like to bring you some advice and some timely tips from the pros we work with who use their tricks of the trade every day of the week in the work that they do. Now, with me today is Dick Gallagher, our contractor on the job. Dick, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you're doing installations with skylights and roof windows?
I would say use common sense and avoid walking on a roof where the pitch is more than 612.
Well, how do you go about determining the roof pitch?
Okay, roof pitch is simply how far that roof rises within 12 inches. In order to determine the pitch of the roof, set your level horizontally. At 12 inches out, measure down, and we have 9 inches. So we have a 9/12 pitch on our roof.
Dick, when you're working on a roof, what kind of footwear should you think about using?
Well, I like to wear an old pair of tennis shoes because they give me flexibility and good grip, and that's very important on a roof.
Now, if you've got to work on a really steep roof, like 9/12 or above, is there any particular equipment you need to use?
Oh, sure. You can rent or borrow a pair of roof brackets, and then you slide a 2x6 in there, and that gives you a nice walking surface.
You can walk right down the horizontal plane of
bet.
the roof? Okay. Dick, for skylights and roof windows, how can you assure that they will not leak?
I think leaks are due to improper installation. Now, if you follow the manufacturer's specifications and put in those step flashings and head flashings properly, it will not leak.
Now, one last word of caution. With the decibel level of such power tools as circular saws and reciprocating saws being pretty high, you'll want to protect your ears, and the best thing to use is earplugs. Don't take any chances. You know, the trend in remodeling today is toward the light. Light woods, light carpet, even the light you bring into your home from skylights. But back in the 60s, it wasn't the same. In those days, they used to make skylights out of plastic. The problem was they'd surface mount them on mastic that would often fail over time because of the changes in temperature and weather, and also the plastic would be damaged by the ultraviolet rays of the sun. Well, today we have state-of-the-art engineering and flashing systems that have really made skylights leak-proof. You don't have to worry about mastic or sealers breaking down because there isn't any. To attain a watertight seal, just follow the step flashing method illustrated in your skylight installation instructions, and your fears of leaking will be no more. Now, there are many different kinds and brands of skylights and roof windows to choose from, not to mention the accessories that go with them. Now, when it comes to shopping for a roof window or a skylight, you'll need to plan ahead. Whether or not you'll have an operable unit is something you'll have to decide, and if it's going to be operating, you'll want to know if it will be done by manual means, or electric means, or even remote control. And if you choose an electronic system, you'll need to know that cost up front will be more, but the convenience will be greater. Now, accessories, you're going to pull down shades, blinds, and even sunscreens. Now, lastly, you'll want to check and be sure that the manufacturer has customer service. He can provide you with information and instructions on the installation and the maintenance of the skylight or roof window, and also a service line you can call if you ever have questions or a problem. Up next, how to fix everything. On today's How to Fix Everything segment, we're going to show you how to repair a hole in drywall or plaster. It's a pretty easy process. Typically, you'll find these things will happen as a result of a door slamming into the wall because there wasn't a door stop perhaps at the bottom, or even an errant toy from a child. If you have the right materials and the right tools, it's a very easy trick. Now what we're going to use here is fiberglass mesh tape with adhesive on the back. You simply lay that on the wall. Once that's in place, take joint compound and just spread it lightly across the surface area there, covering the tape and the hole. Pick up any edges that we have to feather off. And typically that will dry in a couple of hours. Now, we need to do a second and sometimes a third application. If we want to speed the process up, we can use a hairdryer to accelerate the drying process. Now, for a larger hole, it may be necessary to enlarge the opening so that the hole reaches from stud to stud so we can tie in and support the patch. First, we locate the studs by using a tape measure and going inside the hole and measuring to the edge of the opening. Next, we take a pencil and mark the outside dimension of the patch. To do this, we have to add 3/4 of an inch, so we'll be sure to catch the stud on each side. After that, we take the level and draw vertical plumb lines, and then draw corresponding horizontal lines above and below the cut so we can have a square or rectangular patch. Then we begin our cutout with a drywall saw, and when we get to the area of the stud, we use a chisel to finish the job. We do the same on the opposite side, and now we check our hole for smoothness, making sure there are no nails sticking out, and now it should be ready to accept the patch. Next, we set our patch in place and attach it to the studs with drywall screws. The next step is to apply joint compound around the perimeter, leaving a wide enough space so it will accept the tape. Once the tape is in place, we smooth it so there are no air bubbles in it, and then we embed all the tape with joint compound to give us a smooth, level, and even patch surface. Okay, now all we have to do is let this dry. We'll put another coating of joint compound on top of it. When that's all said and done, when it's completely dry, we'll feather it off with 220 grit sandpaper for a nice smooth finish. You can prime it and then wait 24 hours to put on the final top coating of paint. So that's all for today. I'm Jerry Cannell for the Home Pro. See you next time.